so these are heliocentric charts with aspects on them. And 3 totally different ways of drawing aspects. That's all the same chart.
You have to get this written down.
Pardon?
You have to get this written down, honestly.
This is a
for it to just die with you.
This is a this is the first step. Getting to, but it's not really. I've been 40 years working on this.
Yeah.
But like
don't let it die with
the publishing establishment in astrology has its certain group of people that are published and are promoted, and a lot of the main astrologers are independent people. They may produce it themselves and they make a copy of 500 books and then they disappear and they don't get the money to publish again. That's how astrology has always gone on. You know, but this is one with the standard aspects. The squares are red and the trines are blue and the sextiles are green. But the squares take all different size spaces. This one, this is the Earth Sun. The Sun puts a beam of this. There's a beam going out to each planet for the sign it's in, heliocentrically. And then from Earth, there's a beam that goes out from Earth geocentrically for the sign the planet's in. So it has the 2 signs, 2 zodiac signs in the lines of the aspect. As they come together, they make this shape. For the solar system makes this shape. And then this one, each planet's in a certain sign heliocentrically. It sends a beam of light out to each other sign of that color. And each planet does the same. So every aspect is a 2-color mood. You know, so a square between Aries and Capricorn would be red and blue. Whereas a square between Cancer and Libra would be amber and green. Totally different feelings for the square. So, okay, so this is Carl Jung's chart. We got a couple of charts. I'm going to do Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud's, and then we're going to look at the Southern Hemisphere one. So this is Carl Jung's chart, Sun in Leo, Moon in Taurus. Now, when these charts, the zodiac is fixed, the colors set in with the stars. They're moving slowly, but the ascendant moves around. The Earth spins inside of it. So in this case, the ascendant's up here. You can see the 6 houses below by the shaded half. Okay, but these charts, they work with color a lot. It really allows you to intuitively see them in data and work with it, not just rationally. And this is his heliocentric chart of the same chart. So when you're seeing this, in his natal chart, he's got Mercury, Venus. His sun is just in the 7th house with Uranus. His sun is squaring Neptune. His Mercury and Venus are in Cancer in the 6th house. And the Venus squares to Jupiter. But the Mercury and Venus in Cancer, in heliocentrically, here's the sun. From the Earth, you see Mercury, you see Venus, you see the sun, and they're all in the same basic area. You know? But when you look from the sun, his Mercury is in Pisces. His Venus is in Gemini. So the Cancer Mercury in the moment had a Piscean process, which got him into the mysteries of the moment and the divination and the mystical side of things. And the Venus, which was related to, like, what was his book? Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, Cancer. Right? So, but his Venus is there, but heliocentrically Venus is in Gemini, which adds a really intellectual factor to the emotions. So, but his Sun square Neptune, he has Moon square Uranus, and Pluto square Uranus and Saturn. So he's got 2 main squares there. These are the 2 main squares heliocentrically. There's the Saturn to Pluto to Uranus. And here's the Jupiter to Neptune to the Earth. But you get a texture of these. So aside from looking at the nodes, aside from seeing the degrees, aside from seeing the seasons, these aspects lay in, and you get patterns, you get texture of them that just really are distinct. When you see a second chart, it's so different. Every chart's so different. And okay, so this is the first pattern type. This is the second pattern type. It started from the color. Each planet sends a color of, like his Leo sun sends a yellow beam off, and the Moon in Taurus sends a red-orange beam off, and each aspect has 2 colors, has 2 moons. So it's a Taurus, Leo, the Moon and Neptune to the Sun and Uranus. They're red-yellow, but the other aspects, you can see how the Mars to Jupiter is a blue-green. So it's just a mandala with colors, okay? So like, that's a whole class and stuff. I gotta not get pulled in because I can get sucked into one area and there's a lot to go through. This is the same chart heliocentrically, but there's no sun, there's not the Leo. You see there's not as much yellow, but the Earth is in Aquarius, it's gonna be purple, so there's gonna be more purple in this one. And I consider these kind of cosmic Rorschach tests. Okay, and this is the Earth-Sun one where the Earth, from the Earth, the Mars is in Sag, but from the Sun, the Mars is in Capricorn. And here's Earth, there's Jupiter's in Libra, but from the Sun, Jupiter's in Scorpio. So these graphics aren't exactly perfect because there can be little distortions where it's one and it's not the other, but generally you can do this. There's a line that goes out from each planet to the degree it's in, the red lines. So you get just a whole pattern. And so these are the three pattern types. With the one, they're the ones we initially looked at, but the one is your traditional stress, not stress aspects. The other one is using colors. The others are using colors to express textures, and they're not as rational. I mean, imagine they could be, but it'd take a lot of writing. You know, like I was doing this color work in 75, or 72 to 75, and to publish 100 pages would have cost $25,000 back then, because you had to get metal plates and you had to get 5,000 copies made, and it wasn't possible. So since the web came in, it allowed this work to be brought up and then pictures to be made use of without having to publish them. So okay, here's the concept zone.
PDF.
Yeah, so here's the concept zone. But when these were first made, they were, what was the size of them? They were about, quite a few hundred megabytes anyways. You know, they were up there just with all the access and I had to bring it down. I was doing it at 1,200 dots per inch, and I brought it down to 300 to be able to work with these things. So, but this is your conflict zone. Okay, so here's the Earth, there's the Sun, there's the space in between it, and there's the space going all the way along. So on the graph here, I find Carl Jung's is really interesting because his Mercury is in the conflict zone. His Neptune is in the conflict zone. His Jupiter is in the conflict zone. So his Mercury, Neptune, and Jupiter are all fighting between the separativeness and the oneness. I mean, it would probably be, I got inspired after working this. Now, next time I probably would take some mystical masters and when they got initiated to show better, because they would be better representatives of people who had their light and came to the light. Whereas I wouldn't consider Jung and Freud as people who came to the light. They came to a worldly understanding, a psychological understanding, but that's different than a spiritual sense of oneness. It's behavioral. So a lot of psychology has mixed in with astrology and taken over a big chunk of astrology to the point where in a few years people could say if you haven't got your psychotherapy degree, you shouldn't be allowed to be an astrologer. Okay, so like, but psychology is atheistic. It doesn't go to oneness. It doesn't go to God or to spiritual things.
Especially the two-day psychology.
Pardon?
Especially the two-day psychology.
Yeah, see, but astrology, all the old mystical ladies and people had great visions and spirits and had saw God and they had visions. They brought it down through astrology and wrote inspired things about it. Not always rational things, inspired things. We don't find them anymore. They're marginalized. You got to go out of your way to find where they are, to find their materials. You know, the psychological stuff has been pushed into the foreground to such a degree that there's a void now. You know, so, but this is just a good example of this conflict zone, and his Mercury, his Jupiter, and Venus. It leaves you wondering, but he did have this mystical twist in his mind. I mean, Jung thought he was nuts. You know, he couldn't make a fixed judgment. No, it can't be mystical. It can't be just sexual. He had that puzzle going on in his own life. Now, he was no saint. His son Neptune and his stuff, he had enough confusing relationships and weird triangles and different relationships going on that his lifestyle was very male colonial and would not be something anyone would want to have their little daughter around. But he still was a very pivotal person in the development of psychology and to some degree astrology. It is coming to it, like in terms of astrology becoming somewhat scientifically usable. See, I think scientists don't deserve to know astrology. Okay, not that we have to prove it to them. They don't deserve it. They're on a mundane level. They're in the houses. They're not listening to the spirits. So, okay. So this is just another. Let's put all the stars around the chart. This is 745 stars that you can see with your eyes.
Jeez.
Each one had to be put on there individually. And John, that took about a year to make that chart.
And you see what in that?
This is his chart. And so, pardon?
And you see what in all of that?
Well, you slow it down. You take one planet. Usually you use a 1 degree orb for if there's a star conjuncting it. So even in this vast map, there's places where there's no stars. There's places where they pile up. They're different. These stars are the closest ones to our sun. The furthest ones are the furthest ones away. And there's a whole language on this. That's another lecture. But this just lets you put beams. This program would do this so you can see if it's touching any stars. Now, his chart doesn't touch any major stars. They're secondary and third magnitude stars. So the idea is if you have 5 or 6 first magnitude stars you touch, you're a first magnitude person. But if you're second magnitude, you're a second magnitude person, or third, and each magnitude is 6 times more prominent than the one before it. So even though he had a prominent place in his elite genre, you wouldn't call him one of the prominent people in the world. Many people would argue that. Okay, so here's the Rorschach tests. Here's the 3 aspects. Take everything else away, you just have the aspects. I think of them as Rorschach tests, but I also see them. You ever seen Martha Graham dancing in the beanbags? She has the type of dancing where the dancers get inside this bag and they're moving around. They can't see where they're going. They're moving around, they're stretching. It looks just like these. So, okay, here's Sigmund Freud's. I mean, 4 hours to do one chart heliocentrically would be valid. You know, like going over a few, it's really just touching. But here's his chart. He's got the Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, T-square. The Mars and Jupiter, the adrenaline of the passions, and the Saturn, controlling. He has the multiple Taurus things. He has the Neptune and the Pluto in Taurus. He's in that generation. Lots of people were. 38 years Pluto was in Taurus.
That's
So,
his oral fixation.
well, it could be a lot of things, but certainly the Venus, his nature is to see what's appreciating, what's satisfying. But his thing was, if you're not getting that, you must have messed it up because you did something wrong. It was a Mars problem.
Yeah.
Mars screwed it up. Okay, so you can see how he could see that fairly clearly. But in his heliocentric chart, wow, he doesn't have any, they don't form into big complexes. There's not any big T-squares. It's a very different chart than whereas Jung's you had the T-squares and you had more in the heliocentric chart. Here, it's different. So, this is the colored ones, the same ones with the colors. But in both of them, they still have them, even though the Earth would be in Scorpio, which is blue-green, you still see the predominant of red planets and red in this, in the heliocentric side. And this is the Earth-Sun, where you're just measuring from the Earth to the Sun, comparing the two systems, and it takes this shape. Now, so these are his 3 different charts. Unfortunately, I think well, they not put them in the same sheet, but those are his 3 colored aspect charts. What do you say? It's voluminous. Like you want to get into. You want to get to know me? You better sit down. We're going to talk for a few hours. And once we get a few hours, maybe it gets deep enough that we might have to meet again. And we might have to meet again every day or every week for a couple of years to do justice to even get to know each other. That's true for everybody, right? Although we make this mistake often thinking you have to marry them to make it real forever, right? And then you go, oh, I did this. Okay, so here's his conflict point. He has no planets in the conflict zone. Everything was clearly one way. All of his planets, they're centered on the sun side of the soulness of the oneness, and his Mars and the Earth were on the separate side. So the Mars will work with the Earth as a separate function. But nothing, it was clear, cut and dry for him. Now, he wasn't an unmystical person, although his work was to intellectualize these concepts. But he was traditionally Jewish, and he had his family, he stayed with his family, and brought it through, and he was persecuted by the Nazis and things till he died. You know, he had traditions that he maintained. He was like, he kept it, even though he probably is an idiot in his own life, but that's another thing. But you can see he was the teacher teaching his thing, and he'd been doing it for years when Jung came to study from him. And Jung was the unreliable hotshot that came in to learn things. And I'm learning this, but I want to do it my own way. I'm going to do it my own way. And so he came in, he expected Jung was his prodigy that was going to take it and go. And he was heartbroken when it didn't work. But he was the more steady one. It really turned, I never thought like that before. And it just by working with these charts, it sort of slowly brought it around. But this little conflict zone, this little area, it's just, I have to see it now. I'm curious to see whenever I see it, say, what's in the conflict zone? It's kind of like your spiritual puzzle.
Yeah. It's really interesting stuff.
And so this is just with the stars, his charts with the stars. He doesn't have any first magnitude stars either. He has second and third. Might have one first magnitude star, but most of them are second and third. The first magnitudes on this chart, if you see them, if you blow it up, they're the big black ones. There's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth magnitude. Each one has a different star shape. And the planets that have rulers, they're measured, there's little marks around it to tell you what planets rule each star. So this is his 3 Rorschach tests.
Kind of looks like a projection screen, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, he has this sort of kind of square on them, but you don't see it in this one. This one really looks like 2 heads, and somebody's moving the head, moving forward, but like those dancers on big stilts. But okay, so now we're going to just do a little comparison to see them. Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, 2 native charts. So I always love the color. They just show. You have the bucket pattern type. You have the splay pattern type. And I use the pattern types different. When you read the books on the planet types, they put them in the houses, and they're just randomly they're in certain houses. I use them with exact areas of degrees, so that's how the aspect patterns by degrees. So a little bit different. Same pattern, but so this is Carl Jung's helio and Freud's helio. Look at the difference. Jung is the one that's more struggling, more stressed.
Before it was more intellectual.
Well, he had his stress, but it didn't crystallize into a couple of complexes. It would be more diversified around. But really, if you're looking at the chart, and you look at the heliocentric, you have the sun and the oneness and the love, and it's waiting in to affect the Mercury, and the Mercury is supposed to pass it on to the other planets, and the Venus is supposed to pass it on to the other planets. And it's hard to say. They both have stresses on the Mercury and the Venus, but look at this. There's the conjunction. Here's the square. It looks really close, but it's still the square on a conjunction in Freud's. But with Jung's, he's got all these T-squares going on. And Jung was an interesting person, was fascinated with mystical things, but you couldn't call him a spiritual person because he didn't live morally clearly. He didn't live clear or simple. Freud was obsessed and had his hang-ups, his things, but he did live in a much, he messed up a lot too. He wasn't the ideal saint either. They both had affairs and were running around and stuff like that. It was the privilege of being the doctor for the insane women, like you could play. So that was that time. So sometimes it's better you don't know too much about the people you like their books. Because you start reading about them and you see other things.
People doing who they are is often two different things.
Yeah, this is the other two pattern types, the color mandalas. And Jung's is actually colder or darker than Freud's. And these last two with the Sun-Earth combination, the star shapes, and I don't know what to say about them. There they are. But they let you see the Mercury and the Venuses, but the colored ones do better. I like the middle ones, which have all the colors in them. But when we compare the two, this has Jung's across the top, his natal chart. There's Freud's. There's each of the pattern types, just the pattern types without the. So even you could, I mean, it's not hard to see how you can get into this and just work with just that, and get a huge insight on a person's nature. Okay, this is another chart. You see anything different with this chart? It's a Southern Hemisphere chart. The zodiac goes around the other way. And so the Aries point is in Virgo. And it spirals around this way. So if you put the two charts and they were beside each other, Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere chart, they'd fold like this. So if you look at one side and you turn the page around and look at it, you're seeing the Southern Hemisphere chart. It's just the light and the colors aligned in a reverse way. So this is a harmonic convergence. I thought it was really cool because we had a harmonic convergence up here. It was all the stuff was in Leo. It was grand trines in Leo. Wow, so incredible! I went and I hopped in the car and I went and I jumped in as many lakes in Northern Ontario as I could, and I visited these native sites and I had a great adventure. Okay, but if I were in the Southern Hemisphere, I would have done it differently. It was all in those 5 planets were in Aquarius, and the grand trines were all in the air signs. Whoa! Some people believe this was the beginning of a real special age. It was really a special phenomena from the Aquarian, from the Southern Hemisphere side. So, but here you see the grand trines, all the trines, and it's repeated. In heliocentric, you see the one grand trine, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's about 4 different grand trines in the middle of this. So everything is spheres within spheres within spheres. Suddenly, you get to see you're dealing with different textures of light at different spheres, different spheres of energy. And this is just a pattern type of it, from the geocentric chart to the heliocentric. And in this chart, conflict zone, there's no planets in the conflict zone. They're all on the edges of it or on one side of it. It's just clear there's no inner conflict in this time period. So, I guess each one of when I set this up, I knew I could stop at any place, but I thought I better get all of this done first before we took a break. So this is good. We can take a break